Imagine you open the most famous biography in human history. Not a book about an emperor, not the memoir of a politician, but the story of the 1 billions called the Son of God. You read about a miraculous birth from a virgin, about a star over Bethlehem, wise men from the east, a desperate escape into Egypt to save the child from a raging king. Then suddenly you're in Jerusalem. He's 12 years old, a boy among elders. He asks questions and gives answers that shake the teachers of the law. Wisdom that doesn't fit his age, words that sound like prophetic thunder in the quiet of the temple. And then, silence. The next page, he's 30. He's standing in the Jordan River before John the Baptist. No longer a boy, no longer an anonymous carpenter. He is teacher, healer, prophet, Messiah. He challenges the religious system, touches lepers, raises the dead, forgives sinners, and speaks as one who has authority. But what happened between the ages of 12 and 30? 18 years, complete darkness. Not a single verse about his youth. No teenage doubts. No first friendships, no first losses. What did he think about Rome? What did he feel when Joseph died? How did he learn to work, to pray, to grow, not just in body but in heart? Here comes the question that traditional answers don't like. Did nothing happen? Or did someone decide that we didn't need to know? Stay with this video to the end, because today we're going to look at a source that almost never appears in Sunday school, in Western seminaries, or in official lists of approved sacred books. We'll lift the veil on a tradition that has preserved stories about the hidden years of Christ for nearly 2,000 years. A tradition born not in Rome or Constantinople, but in the mountains of East Africa, where the Bible is not 66, but 81 books, where the language of Scripture is older than Latin, where the Church never bowed to empires, but guarded its memory like a flame in the night desert. This is not fantasy. This is Ethiopia. And if you're ready to question the comfortable silence and see Jesus through the eyes of a different, ancient, unbroken tradition, write in the comments right now. The truth was never lost. It was hidden. Hit like if you're ready to see the Bible from another angle. Subscribe if you want more journeys into the forgotten layers of Christian history. Now let's begin. Historians call them the lost years of Jesus. Theologians call them the mystery of Christ's childhood and youth. Ordinary people ask more simply, where was he? What was he doing? Why weren't we told? There are popular theories. Some say he traveled to India, learned from sages, met ascetics, drank water from the Ganges. Others claim he lived among the Essenes, a strict desert community, where he studied scripture and prepared for his mission. Others insist that things were much more ordinary. Jesus stayed in Nazareth, worked with his hands, honored his mother, learned a trade, served those around him quietly, without followers and cameras. The Bible used by most Protestant and many Catholic churches is silent about this. We have a few lines in Luke saying he grew in wisdom and stature. And that's it. No stories, no scenes, no everyday miracles. But here's the paradox. Outside the Western canon, there are ancient texts that speak about Jesus' childhood and youth. And among the most important witnesses is the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. There we find books that were never accepted as official in Rome or Constantinople, but lived in hymns, liturgies, and monastic libraries in Ethiopia. Books where Jesus is still a child, yet already wondrous. Still a boy, yet already one who remembers how the world was made. To understand why the Ethiopian tradition is so unique, we have to step away from the stereotype of Africa as the place missionaries from Europe later brought Christianity to. In reality, one of the oldest Christian streams grew on African soil from the very beginning. In Acts chapter 8, we read about an Ethiopian eunuch, a high official under Queen Candace. He is returning from Jerusalem, holding a scroll of the prophet Isaiah, and he doesn't understand who it's about. God sends Philip to him. The apostle climbs into the chariot, explains that the prophet speaks of Jesus, and right there on the road in the desert, this man says, "Look, here is water. What prevents me from being baptized?" And he becomes the first African Christian explicitly mentioned in Scripture. For the Western Church, this is often a footnote. For Ethiopia, it's a beginning. They believe that by the 1st century, In the lifetimes of the apostles themselves, the gospel reached their lands. That means Ethiopian Christianity is not a copy of Roman Christianity. It's a parallel, independent stream, just as ancient as the churches of Asia Minor or Syria. While Rome was convening councils, debating doctrinal formulas, and gradually becoming the capital of Western Christianity, Ethiopia lived its own story. Its church officially adopted Christianity early, around the same time Constantine was still deciding whether to be baptized at all. Was never colonized by European empires. Preserved Ge'ez as its liturgical language, ancient, melodic, visually unlike Greek or Latin. And most crucially, Ethiopia did not go through the same book selection process the West did. Its Bible has 81 books, 15 additional books that most Christians in the world have never heard of. These include expanded historical narratives, additional apocalyptic visions, texts that link the Old and New Testaments in ways we are not used to, and yes, testimonies about those silent years of Jesus. While Europe was deciding which books should stay in the canon and which should be branded apocrypha, Ethiopia simply preserved what it had received, not rushing to trim and format memory to fit imperial needs. As one scholar put it, when the West forgot its African roots, it forgot where the feet of Jesus first walked. Ethiopia did not forget. To grasp how Ethiopia sees its role in the biblical story, we have to open a very special book, the Kebra Nagast, the Glory of Kings. You've probably heard of the Queen of Sheba, a mysterious ruler who visits King Solomon, tests him with questions, brings gold, spices, and gifts. In the Bible, that's a brief episode. But for Ethiopia, it's not just diplomacy. It's the birth of a dynasty that saw itself as descended from David. According to the Kebra Nagast, after meeting Solomon, the Queen of Sheba returns to Ethiopia not alone. She carries his child, a son who will be called Menelik I. Menelik grows up, travels to Jerusalem, meets Solomon, and returns home not only with his father's blessing. According to Ethiopian tradition, the Ark of the Covenant goes with him, the sacred chest that held the tablets of the law, where God's presence was said to dwell, which split waters and shattered idols. Ethiopia claims, the Ark didn't disappear. It is with them, in a church in the city of Aksum, in a sanctuary off-limits to tourists and scholars. It is guarded by a single monk, who is never allowed to leave the compound until he dies. He doesn't give interviews, doesn't become a YouTube celebrity. He simply stands guard. His whole life. For Western scholarship, this sounds like legend. For Ethiopia, it is living reality. They aren't interested in proving it to the world. They are interested in preserving it. That's important. A people who believe they are bearers of the covenant, that the symbol of God's presence dwells in their land, will treat their written tradition very differently from an empire that wants control. In 2012, a major genetic study found clear traces of Middle Eastern, Semitic, ancestry in Ethiopians dating back roughly 3,000 years, the time of Solomon. Is that proof? No. Is it a striking coincidence with an ancient story? Absolutely. One thing is clear. In Ethiopia's self-understanding, its story is tightly woven into the story of Israel, not through colonial Christianity, but through deeper pre-colonial threads. And it's precisely such a people with such self-identity that preserves its gospel traditions, including accounts of Jesus' early years. Picture a small village, dusty paths, children playing by a stream. Some are molding little birds out of clay, just a game, a child's pastime. Among them is one boy. He takes a piece of clay, shapes a bird, looks at it, and whispers something the others don't understand. Suddenly, these clay birds rise, spread their wings, and fly, as if they responded to the voice that once spoke at creation. Let there be. Stories like this appear in several ancient texts. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas, the Arabic Infancy Gospel, and in Ethiopian tradition, in works such as the Book of the Contending of Christ and others. Their Jesus is not merely an obedient carpenter's son. He is a child experimenting with the power flowing through him. Another episode, Joseph takes a commission to build a bed. A serious job, wealthy client, money the family needs. But one plank turns out too short, a mistake that could cost him his reputation. The young Jesus comes, places his hands on the board, and stretches it to the proper length. No tricks, no tools, just a simple carpenter's error corrected by supernatural power. Another scene, children are playing, one falls, breaks his leg. Crying, panic. Jesus touches him, and the child stands up as if nothing happened. These stories show more than miracles. They show character, a child who cares about his father's shame, a friend who cannot ignore pain, a young Messiah learning to use his power not for show, but for mercy. But there are darker episodes too, and these are the ones that shock people the most when they first encounter such texts. Almost every family has a story of when a child lost it for the first time. Threw something, hit someone, shouted a hurtful phrase and later regretted it. Now imagine a child whose anger can kill. One story preserved in Ethiopian tradition alongside other ancient texts tells of Jesus walking with a group of children. A boy bumps into him, perhaps by accident. The young Jesus looks back and says, "You shall not go any further," and the child falls dead. The village is horrified. Parents weep. Everyone turns to Joseph. "Who is your son? What kind of child is this?" Joseph grabs Jesus by the ear, an ancient gesture of sharp rebuke. Jesus raises the boy back to life, but the message has already landed. This is no ordinary child that God sometimes helps to do miracles. This is a child whose very word carries terrifying power. Another story, children are playing hide and seek. Some refuse to come out. Jesus becomes angry, speaks a word, and they turn into animals, say goats. Parents beg, cry, plead, and he restores them. Does it sound too much like a fairy tale? Maybe, but the point isn't how literally we interpret each of these scenes. They force us to confront an image of Jesus that is almost absent in Western preaching. Jesus who is growing in the awareness of his own power. We have been taught Jesus is perfect from the cradle. Everything in him is balanced, calm, ideal. He never overdoes it, never lets emotions cross the line. But if the incarnation is real incarnation, not a theater mask, is it really unthinkable that he passed through a genuine childhood? With genuine emotions, with learning, with the process of maturing. These stories show Jesus who does not lose his divine nature, but goes through human development, has power, yet learns to wield it consciously and mercifully. Lives not in a sterile myth, but in real human drama. Do all theologians accept this? Of course not. Some say, these accounts are later inventions, apocrypha that contradict John's Gospel, where Jesus' first sign is clearly at Cana, turning water into wine. Others respond, maybe Cana was the first public miracle of the adult teacher, while these childhood stories reflect a different layer of memory that never made it into the canon. Either way, they raise a crucial question. Do we allow Jesus to be as real as he is ideal? A Jesus who only floats above the earth in pristine perfection is beautiful but distant. A Jesus who learns, grows, grapples with anger and control. That is a God we can recognize in our own struggles. Now we come to the most sensitive part. Most of us are used to thinking that the Bible just is, that it has always existed as it sits on our shelves. 66 books, Old and New Testaments, divided into chapters and verses, sometimes with Jesus' words in red. In reality, the canon formed gradually, step by step, and every step was taken not by angels but by human beings. By the 3rd and 4th centuries, the church existed across different regions. Egypt, Syria, Asia Minor, Rome, each community had its own set of texts. Some read the Shepherd of Hermas, some the Epistle of Barnabas, some their own gospel traditions. When Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea in 325, he thought not as a theologian but as a politician. He needed unity in his empire. Divided churches meant a divided state. The Nicene Council did not finalize the canon, but it launched a process where the chief priority was not only truth, but also manageability. Later, bishops like Athanasius compiled lists of books accepted as Holy Scripture. His list in 367 AD is the first we have that contains exactly the 27 New Testament books we know today. What does this mean? That alongside spiritual discernment there were always theological debates, political interests, fear of schism, and dangerous ideas. When, over 1,000 years later, King James I of England commissioned a new English Bible translation in 1604, his aim was not purely spiritual either. He wanted religious unity in his kingdom, control over church life, and a uniform text that would support the existing hierarchy. The scholars who translated it were brilliant, but they weren't deciding which books belonged in the Bible. They worked within a canon shaped centuries before them. The word apocryphal often meant less false, and more not from our line of authority, not convenient for our system. Meanwhile, far from Rome and London, in the mountains of Ethiopia, the church lived outside this process. It did not receive imperial orders. It did not participate in Latin debates. It simply preserved its books, the ones it had received, sung, proclaimed for generations. So when we ask, where do these strange stories about young Jesus come from? The answer is often, they remained on the other side of the imperial filter. That doesn't make them automatically truer, but it also keeps us from casually saying, if they're not in our Western Bible, they're worthless. Every time an empire rewrote history, someone on the margins quietly preserved it. In Ethiopia, those guardians were monks, priests, and communities living not in marble basilicas, but in rock-hewn caves and mountain monasteries. In the 16th century, when the armies of Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi invaded, burning churches and destroying holy places, Ethiopian Christians fled to the hills with scrolls and codices in their hands. They wrapped books in cloth, hid them in caves, buried them in the ground. What burned, they rewrote from memory. Not because they wanted to save museum pieces, but because without those texts they could not imagine their connection to God. In the 20th century, during the communist Derg regime, when the state tried to silence the church, priests kept copying gospels by hand, by candlelight, whispered scripture in the dark, taught children Jesus, so they could pray and read as their ancestors did. At the monastery of Abba Garima, the Garima Gospels survive, some of the oldest complete gospel manuscripts in the world, dated roughly to the 4th to 7th centuries. They are not in the Louvre or the British Museum. They remain where they were created as the living memory of a community. One monk once said, "We buried the books, but the word was never buried." That explains why Ethiopian tradition preserved so much of what the West calls lost or apocryphal. They did not go through the Reformation, Counter-Reformation, or the exact Catholic-Protestant split we know. Their main challenge was different: to survive physically and to preserve memory. And in that memory, Jesus is not only the gentle, serene teacher from Western icons. He is the one who grew up alongside them, who could do everything from childhood, yet learned to use his power according to the Father's will, who was not only above life, but deeply inside it. You might say, okay, interesting, atmospheric, but what do I do with this? Why should I care that Ethiopia has extra books? Strange stories about young Jesus, legends about the Ark. Look at it this way. Maybe these stories are not given to us to replace Matthew or John. Maybe they are given as a mirror showing us just how narrow we often make our faith. We're used to a very convenient Jesus. No hard questions, no dangerous emotions, no strange episodes that are tough to explain in a children's Bible. As a result, Christ becomes an ideal symbol, but sometimes loses the very trait that makes him truly close: real humanity. The accounts preserved in Ethiopian tradition remind us God entered the world for real, with all the chaos of childhood and adolescence. He grew, learned, listened, asked questions, may have miscut a piece of wood, maybe broke something in Joseph's workshop. He knew anger, frustration, misunderstanding, and at the same time perfect obedience to the Father. Are these texts on the level of canon? For the Ethiopian church, yes. For most Western churches, no. But either way, they teach us not to fear a complex Jesus. The one who doesn't fit neatly into our polished images, disturbs our assumptions, forces us to ask questions instead of reciting formulas. Because maybe truth has never been afraid of questions. Only those who built empires around it were. We've taken a long journey today, from the silence between Jesus' 12th and 30th years, to the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, to manuscripts in the highlands of Tigray, to legends of the Ark of the Covenant in Aksum, to the dark and beautiful stories of a divine child learning to carry his own power. Does this mean you must believe every Ethiopian account of the hidden years? No, but maybe it does mean it's time to stop fearing questions like, did every book that could have belonged in the Bible actually make it in? Were emperors and politics involved in shaping the canon, not just prophets and apostles? Have we lost stories along the way that could have made Jesus feel even more alive and close? And most importantly, what kind of Jesus do you carry inside? A sterile Jesus without a childhood story, for whom everything just works out? Or a Jesus who grew the way you grow, through mistakes, through struggle, through searching, through learning obedience? Write in the comments, what kind of Jesus were you shown growing up? What part of the Ethiopian story resonated with you the most? Do you have your own questions about the hidden years of his life? If this video awakened curiosity in you, hit like. Not for the algorithm, but as a sign that you're willing to listen to other voices of history. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring. Forgotten Christian traditions, unknown books, stories preserved not by imperial power, but by the love of ordinary believers. Because truth isn't always standing on a throne in the center of the empire. Sometimes it sings quietly in the mountains, in an ancient tongue, in monastic chants, in the breath of a grandmother reading worn-out pages. Maybe the story of Jesus was never truly lost. Maybe it was hidden, waiting for a generation brave enough to ask questions, not afraid of complicated answers. If you've watched this far, you are part of that generation. See you in the next chapter. And remember, sometimes what we forget is exactly what we most needed to remember.